On today's podcast, we have one of the most amazing women you will ever meet, a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, and none other than my mother. We're excited to have her on the show. Let's cue the intro and we'll get right to it.
I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Majic for Life.
What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Majic for Life podcast, and I'm so excited to have one of my favorite people on the planet and our esteemed guest, my mother, Marlene Johnson. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Well, you're welcome. This should be interesting. So I'm excited to see what kind of questions you might ask me.
Oh, no, I know. Scary. Right now, to all you entrepreneurs out there, our fearless leaders have always and over again, they remind us we should interview our parents. And it just so happens that my parent has a lot to offer entrepreneurs because she is one. And I think through my years, I was inspired over and over again to be able to head down an entrepreneur path. However, I'll let her tell her story and her backstory about how this all started. But you didn't start out as an entrepreneur. You started out getting jobs, doing all sorts of things. So kind of give us your backstory and kind of give us an idea of the jobs that you've done and how you ended up being an entrepreneur and all that kind of stuff. So how did this whole thing start? Something like a bridal shop, as I recall, or was it there's something before that?
Well, actually, it started with my parents, actually. And basically, when you grow up in a family filled with love and people who never say no, it brings you to a realization in your life that you look for solutions, not for problems. And my parents built their own home and built a huge, strong family, financially stable for their four daughters that they had. And basically, we grew up seeing my father and my mother build things and create things and never say no. They came from the era where if you wanted something, you had to build it yourself because they didn't have a lot of contractors then. They didn't have all of those things. So basically, it was one of those things, if my dad has time to think, then we're going to have a new project in the house and we're all going to enjoy it and learn how to find solutions for it. So I think it really, I was thinking about this just the other day that, your parents laid the groundwork for how you're going to deal with almost anything in your life, love, grief, separation, success, and how you think about it. And basically, their mode of operation has always been everything you do is a success to them. And so we grew up in an environment where they participated in everything we did and supported it. And if we had a project, they had a project. So we're always building and creating things as we grew up and looking for solutions. And there was never a time that my mother or father said, we can't do this. We can't handle anything that's coming to them. They worked hard. We weren't rich, but we were wealthy in love and family. And so I think having that as a background is really the premise of where I come from, because they taught me how to work hard, how to, take on anything. It's kind of been one of those things. I've never looked at life as, oh, no, I can't do this. I've always looked at life as, how do we get what I want? What's the easiest way to do it? what's the least expensive way to do it to provide a quality product, whether it is for people or around people or for activities. So basically my approach to life was, okay, I haven't done it, but I'm going to do it. And so how am I going to do it, and how am I going to get the best at doing it? So as far as career, I started out after I had my dearly beloved son here, and was divorced a couple of years. I decided to, well, I had a jobs all through my life, multiple jobs all through my life. I never was the mother that only had one job. I had lots of responsibilities because I felt responsible for raising my son and making sure he had what he wanted. And so that was my ultimate goal. And my parents too felt the same way about it. So so my first job was at my first real job was I had a job in high school, was at a bridal center right before I was ready to get married. How appropriate was that, you know? So I had all the resources to help me with that wedding that I was planning. And so I learned a lot of talents just for a little while, got married, ran off 2 years so my husband could go to junior college, and then came back home, had Michael. And then my next job I had was at the chemistry department and as a secretary, but I saw an opportunity to evolve that a little bit further. So I started typing dissertations and got really good at it. And in the chemistry department, all the nomenclature is words you can barely pronounce, and certainly not things you understand. But I became the go-to. So I was making a lot of extra money doing dissertations then, so I learned that skill. From there, I went back to a bridal center and was working in the bridal section. I was selling bridal gowns and basically decided, hey, I can make bridal gowns. I'm a seamstress. Basically, I knew how to sew, but basically what I told myself is I can make bridal gowns, designer bridal gowns. So I decided to do that. Well, the other folks in the bridal center, florists, the tuxedo place, they decided I should be helping them because I was resourceful. So I learned the bridal business, all of the aspects of it. And so then all of a sudden I was a florist. Then I got my technical job working for a technical company that did contract work for Sandia Laboratories. And I was a new girl on the block. And it was a good old boy system with lots of military managers in the organization. And they would only go after contracts that were the good old boy contracts, the Air Force and the Army. And basically they would do all of their work in-house. Well, I had the opportunity to start writing contracts. No, I'd never written a contract in my life, but I decided I needed to learn how to write proposals and win contracts at the largest laboratory that we had in New Mexico, Sandia Labs, and create teams of people that I had no idea what they did or how they did it, and create teams. So I started interviewing and creating teams and writing contracts, proposals, and winning them. And so basically I went from supporting word processing support at that company to running probably 20 contracts with probably 200 people that were on site, unheard of, because we didn't go and do work on site. So I had to manage hundreds of people doing different disciplines. I remember one of my projects was radiation protection, and most people don't know what that is. And I decided I want that contract. I'm just going to go start interviewing all these guys who want positions like this that do this. And I because of that, I won the contract and basically was entrenched in environmental safety and health and learned all about that. So basically I was doing on-site visits all over Sandia. Well, I became a computer expert in the meantime. I was writing, I was supporting and managing, and I was winning all the contracts for the good old boys. And so I became very powerful at the company. And during this time, I started dancing. And my mentor who ran the ballroom program at the university had a horrible accident. And I was about 2 or 3 semesters into that. And she knew I liked to teach. So she asked me to take over some of her classes. And then she decided to retire. So she gave me her whole dance program. And of course, hadn't done that before either. So I had to figure out how to put a syllabus together, how to have beginning, intermediate, advanced classes for my students. And so community college heard about that, and they wanted me to start teaching for them as well, some side dance classes, because it was very popular. So I started running the university dance program I did that for 11 years, and had to figure out how to get return business, even though I wasn't making a profit off of that. Well, that grew bigger, and I started my own dance business, of course, that turned into that. And in addition to working my technical job, running, managing contracts, and then I worked for another contractor after that, doing the same thing, winning them awards. And there was a position at Sandia later on down in my career, and I was selected for that to work at Sandia again, running contracts. But this time it was to support all of the administrative staff at Sandia, hundreds of mostly female workforce that worked for the union. So now I had to learn about how union work was managed. It was very difficult. For those of you who've never worked with unions, they have very high regulations. They're there to say their employees never do anything wrong, and we're there to make sure everything is followed by the contract to the T. And so I was in charge of one union, and then all of a sudden 4 unions at the laboratories, and I was in charge of all of them, and hiring all of the positions for all of that. So thousands of people, thousands of reviews, lots of counseling, lots of negotiating and contract work. So I was doing that by day, dancing by night, and getting Michael through high school and to follow his dream, which was to, I remember he said when he started dancing, I want to be the next United States Latin champion, because I just brought the United States Latin champion for a big showcase and workshop. And it was so impressive to him that became his dream. He wanted to be a dancer. And so I said, oh yeah, sure, we'll do that. And and so along the line, Michael was learning to dance alongside us and participating in our dance program. But because of all of that, had I said to myself, I can only do one job, or I've never done this, so therefore I shouldn't do it, I would have had a very different output for where I am today. So all of that, I see myself as not a risk taker. In the scheme of when you read your management books, there's risk takers and there's people who need a lot of security. Well, I did need a lot of security in the sense that I wanted to make sure I always had a base for finance and to support my family, which was my son and my home. And so that was always important. So I always had my technical job, and then I had my play job. And so, but along with that, because I had done all of those other jobs, all of the chemistry work that I did in the past fell into all the contract writing and all of the ES&H contracts that I won and supported. And because I did all those dissertations, I was able to be very, very good at writing and putting together packages for proposals, because of all of the work that I did in the bridal stores that went forward into my dancing, the costuming, putting on shows, organization, planning workshops, bringing in professionals. And so that fed into that. And then my technical job at Sandia helped me continue using all of those skills. I was the person that was in charge of morale at the laboratories and all the groups that were there. I was the one that was meeting all the requirements for HIPAA and for how do we keep inclusiveness important in the workplace. So I was that person. I was the go-to for all of that. So with that brought me lots of opportunities to say, no, I can't do this. But for some reason, I guess because of my parents, I wasn't ever in a position where I said, I won't do this. I just decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability and far beyond that which anybody else has ever thought or assumed they could do and accomplish. And so, but it was just a personal, in my mindset, I believed that if you're going to provide a service, you have to provide the best service to your customers. You have to understand who your customers are, and you have to understand what drives them. And you have to meet their expectations every time, not just once, every time. Consistency is so important. And so that fell through, that was my premise for everything I did. And people would say, oh, like I used to say with my dad, she had a minute to think. So now we've got a new project, and Michael would fall into that category of going, oh no, mom was thinking. And so we have a new project that nobody had ever done before in our dance business. And so I took risks in that way, but I always made sure I was financially secure so that I could do those things. So all my extra jobs were to supplement what I needed to do for my son to get him through college, and also to supplement our playtime. So all of that extra work, although I had many jobs, was fun. And I always said, the minute it isn't fun anymore, then I'm not going to do it anymore. I just can't do it. So in a nutshell, I've had many opportunities. I look at life as I'm a fact finder. So no matter what I'm doing, I have to figure out everything about it so that I can feel comfortable with it. And my father was a fact finder, so I see that coming down through me and how I approach things and want completeness when I'm providing a service to someone. And that was probably longer than you needed, so I'm sorry.
No, that was perfect. You know, the interesting thing is I started writing down all the things that you did along the way. And it's so funny because you kind of downplayed the fact that you were a business owner in terms of you went and rented a space and you started a dance studio and you created a home for a whole bunch of dancers to come to. And that was a business that you created on the side. And for most people and for a lot of entrepreneurs, that is like their only thing. Like that is their thing. And you were doing that and you were doing all those other things. And, you know, I think the interesting thing is that, you know, in referring back to our papa, you know, your dad, he knew how to do everything. And I think that was one of the things that really, you know, we say his generation, but I don't actually know if it was all of his generation. I think it was his friends. Like, so we look at his friends and the people that he hung out with, and they were like-minded individuals. But I don't know that it was his entire generation. But he did learn how to do everything. He was the electrician and the plumber and the house builder, and he excavated the land and he flattened it and he figured out how to do every piece of it. And then you look at how things changed, and as things and times got more modern, you did the same thing in a more modern era. It just wasn't about the same stuff, you know? And so you look at it, and I counted 16, and I'm sure you left some out because I think at one point in there you were a cake decorator, like you did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
So
forgot.
you
A
forgot
little
that
party
one.
planner, event planning, cake decorating, party, putting on parties.
Yeah. Like, and
Creative
so like,
side of my mind.
so
Yeah.
I think I'm up to 17 if I counted properly. And I'm probably missing, you know, 10 more. But the thing is that I think one of the things that I see over and over and again with entrepreneurs is that, you know, you get this fire and you get this idea, like, I'm going to do this thing, right? That idea that you had, or that Papa would have, or, you know, that my team dreads when I go, hey, I have an idea, and they all freak out, you know, because we tend to have big ideas, you know. But I think the thing with entrepreneurs that I see over and over again is that we kind of have to have this delusional quality about us that is like, I have this big idea, but I'm not going to actually look at everything that goes into it, because if I do, I'm not going to go on. And so you look at what made it possible to get to the point where you were like, yeah, I'm going to rent a building and we're going to run this program. Like, if we'd have said everything that happened in the 10 years after that, it would have been like, yeah, no, not going to do that. But the skills that you gained, I mean, holy cow, there were so many skills along the way. And I think for new entrepreneurs coming in the game, like, there's a certain element of that, you know. You have to get in and you have your thing that you love, but there are like 20 other things that you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to get proficient at. You're going to have to become amazing at. And some of it sucks. Like, some of it sucks because you're like, I am not an accountant. And if I don't learn how to get good at this accounting thing, life is going to suck. And someday the first thing I'm going to hire is an accountant, you know, for whatever piece that is. But in so many instances, like you talked about through your story of what you did, like, you just learned what you needed to learn and you took on the thing, and you're like, well, I can do that. And I, you know, I appreciate so much that you said it was from, your parents, because I believe that I got it from you and them, and I was lucky enough to be able to experience that with both of you. But it was always oh, you have this idea, let's try it, and in so many instances we had you created and they created experiences for me to see that over and over again. And I remember, hating having to go out and mow the lawn, because it was like, oh, that sucks. And I would complain about it every time.
Yes, we did.
But yes, but it was like, but at the same time, like I remember expressing interest in blocks. I wanted to have blocks to play with. And I remember, Papa going, hey, let's just build some. And I was like, do you know how to do this? He's like, no, let's go. I have some wood in the garage. We're going to figure it out. And he just built blocks. And I think we had those for years after that because we wanted blocks. And he was like, we'll build some blocks. And I find myself doing that kind of thing at home, with the kids, like, oh, you want to do that? And my first thought is always, all right, how can I do it? Let's just go figure out how to build that thing or make that thing happen. And I don't know, I feel like that's huge, that's the case. But I definitely want to point out, though, all of the different things that you did. I mean, like, I didn't know so many of those things. Like I knew some of them, the highlights growing up, but I didn't know some of the things that you did. Like I had no idea that you did contract writing, and and I knew you managed people, but I had no idea that you managed hundreds and thousands of people, and so you look at that and you kind of go, wow, I didn't know mom did that. And yet I was able to watch I was able to watch the results of that as you managed people in your dance studio, and as you managed the people you were bringing in, and managed the people moving, because there's a certain element of getting them to move that was that not everybody's good at, and you could move them.
Well, the biggest difference in your dance program and mine, as we know, is that you teach privates and I taught group lessons, social dance, and had to create and maintain population that was ever growing. And if I didn't do it well, they wouldn't continue to take the classes. When you teach strict syllabus, and I wasn't doing straight syllabus except for at the university, if you do straight syllabus, then you lose them after one semester. And my job was to create a community. My job in my mind was to create a community of dancers who were exceptional at going out and dancing with each other and keeping that social aspect of community together. And so moving 100, I would get 100 people every Friday night at our dances. We teach 2 lessons. We'd give them a social hour with food and drink and lots of fun. And you have to work hard to maintain any kind of customer. So if you're not giving them something new all of the time, and moving them towards each other, moving them away from each other, whatever, then it doesn't happen. And I don't know, it's that pebble, the snowball that rolls down the hill and becomes, a big ball. It's great to have the ball, but if you're not managing it, it crashes and it's no longer even a little pebble. And so, managing that, we had hundreds of customers, return customers all the time. It was a fun time for us. But there were so many aspects I was using, so many skills I was using, and during that time too, one of the things I did mention is one of my responsibilities over the administrative was not only just counseling, coaching, career development, all of that, but I was responsible for a feel-good newsletter that I had to type up every week for them. Had to motivate hundreds of people so that they would be return customers to my website. And I would get so many comments from those. It was shocking how many people were sharing the newsletters. And so that was a different part of my creative self that I was using to help people and motivate them to be better at what they were doing, to overcome their challenges and so forth. So, it's funny how you use all those skills that you learn. I'm a true believer that if you're learning something today, whether it's a hard learn or an easy learn, meaning out of sadness or out of joy or frustration, you're going to use it. we're not given skills in our life to not use them in the future. And I've had time and time again opportunities to see that's what happens in our lives. And so, and I don't remember who said this to me, but they said if you think you can't do something, then that's when you absolutely should do something. So the minute you say that word, I don't think then you need to do it. And so I just learned, other than pure exhaustion, of course, then you can't do it, or lack of any kind of financial resource to get you started. But you have to, if you see it and you say I can't, then you should. And I've had some wonderful mentors in my life, both on the finance end and on the motivational end. Sometimes I didn't realize that they were, but on the finance side, I because I needed that security, one of my managers said, whenever you get a raise, take that money and put it into your 401k plans or put it into a savings account. Pretend you never got it and invest right away, because we will spend whatever we have, the resources we have, and not even blink an eye at it. And so I did that, and always put as much as you can into your 401k program, so you get as much maximum matching that you can get from your companies. Take what they're giving you. Don't leave anything on the table. And so my parents paid cash for everything. They had to scrimp and they had to save, and they built a whole house with cash flow on an income that was very small. So I look at myself and I say, why can't I do the same? Oh, am I overspending? Am I wasting my money? How am I investing it? But time and time again, I've been able to fall back on the finances that I've secured from, decisions when I was a young person to do it. And that really helps. It helps to understand that you have to figure out what security level you need and how you're going to save that money and how you're going to make every little piece count as you go along the way. But those were two really good things that I learned early on, and they've served me well. But if I wasn't enjoying, it's interesting, who likes writing contracts? Who wants to go interview a bunch of ES&H guys? And usually it's still a man's world about, personal protective equipment, hazmat, all those things that are in the news today, and who wants to do that? But to me, it seemed very intriguing to put the puzzle pieces together and see if I could do it, because, none of the good old boys are willing to try or work that hard, or, and it's all about saying you can and moving forward in those situations. So I don't know. It's interesting.
You gained all these skills, and you've been able to essentially be in an employee position as well as an entrepreneur position. So you've taken on both roles, and in so many instances as an employee, you can actually get away with not learning and not getting all those skills, but you managed to do that, and then you were able to take those skills and use them for your thing. And I feel like that comes a lot from our papa, from the idea that he was an employee. But I don't know that, like, even growing up, I don't remember ever seeing him as an employee. I knew he worked at Borden's Dairy, but I always felt like his attitude and his approach to it was that he owned it. You know what I mean? Like, and I know he didn't, and I knew he didn't, but he approached it like he did. He approached it like he owned it. That was his thing that he did. And it seemed as though almost everything he went into, he had an approach that he owned it. He was owning the thing that he was doing. And there was that I don't know, maybe it's just because I saw Hamilton recently, but like it was that American attitude, like we are here and I own what I do and I own what I'm going to get,
Well, to me, it's about that level of accountability and responsibility to yourself and to others that makes you that person. I've never gone to work, no matter how hard my jobs have been, and I've had some very stressful jobs, very demanding. I never went to work and said, I'm just an employee. I've never treated myself that way. And we're all employees. You own your business, but you're an employee of your customer. And so basically the reality is, when you start believing I'm just an employee, then you've lost part of your capability to rise to who you really can be. I've always gone into my jobs, looked and said, how can I make this better? How can I serve my customers in a way that they know they're fully supported and they have my 100% at any time, that they will depend on me? How do I create that relationship? And how do I give the most to the people I work with around me, the staff around me, and to my managers? I shouldn't have to be asked to think and become a better person, uh, taking care of the people around me. And the people around me were other staff members equal to my position. You have to think outside the box and say, what is it? Do I want to just be an employee, or do I want to make a difference? And if you want to make a difference, then you look around you and you figure out what those differences are going to be. Oh, well, they assigned me some silly, I'm in charge of all of the events this year at work, and I'm like, oh gosh, I have to organize that. But to me it was, okay, how are we going to decorate? How are we going to do food? How are we going to do some diversity things to make this tie in so everybody's enjoying themselves? How do we create the communication people need to be comfortable with each other and respect each other? So to me, I'm like, oh boy, let's get this going. Oh, we're having a meeting, I'm going to make this interesting. I'm not going to be boring, I'm going to make it interesting. And yeah, it takes a little bit more work, but it shows who you are to everyone. And the reality is, the other thing that I think I need to mention is, when you work and operate from the point of, I'm giving my 100% all the time to the customers that I really care about, that is never forgotten. You may not know that those customers are out there and appreciating that time you gave them, all of your service to them, but you will now become the essence of their standard. You're creating a standard for them to expect from other people. And sometimes we forget that we affect people in so many ways all the time. What we say, how we approach things. I have people coming to me still now that used to work with me under my management years ago, and they say, I've learned so much from you. I learned to be detail oriented. I learned to figure out how to ask the right questions. I learned to be, in a position where I liked what I was producing. And when you as a person are walking down the street and saying, okay, this is what I do and this is what I give, you have to remember that you do affect others. And that appreciation, while it might not be spoken today, is spoken to others. That is your biggest marketing plan. That is who you become, who you are. And I've learned that time and time again, shockingly so, through so many things that I've done. And so like I say, I don't treat myself as just an employee, because I'm not. I am that person who, you need help. What kind of help do you need? Let me see what I can give you beyond that help that you've asked for. I have to listen, I have to look, and I have to act. And if you don't have all those things, then you're not going to produce what you think you're going to produce.
Well, in today's marketing world, it's all heading back to that. It's heading back to that place where, the best advice out there is, be real, be authentic, and actually over deliver. And that's, I don't know if that's, I don't think that's new thinking. I think it comes back from our papa's era. It was over deliver. If you're going to do something, over deliver. Don't just do it and do the minimum. Over deliver. And it comes all the way back from times of mowing the lawn and him coming out and going, did you finish? And I went, yep. And then he went, well, what about that? And what about this? And it used to drive me nuts, but it certainly taught me the lessons of how that inundated itself into my world and moving forward. Um, so
Well, on that note, let me just point out one thing. We've just sold your grandparents' estate. And what I learned through that process is that people use their eyes to look, but they don't see. And we need to learn how to see what it is we're trying to accomplish, the details. It is about the details that people become disappointed. And, we hear, but we don't listen. And so, again, part of delivering who you are to other people is to have those qualities that are true no matter what you're doing. I can't slough here if I want my image to be this. And so anyway, sorry to interrupt, but
no, I mean that's it. That's what we
thought.
help our listeners understand and get a grip for, because I think you can hear it, and sometimes it needs to be said 16 ways, for you to go, oh, I just have to be real. I just have to be who I am. And when we can do that, that's literally one of the better things that we can sell, because then you don't have to pretend ever. You don't have to worry if you said the wrong thing, because you're just being you. And that's huge, Um, okay. So, you talked about all these times in there, slyly mentioned that there was hard times, but when everything wasn't working out, and when the money wasn't coming in, and when there wasn't much money, how did you keep your emotions in check and keep yourself pushing through?
Well, my first contract job got just as a technical person creating all those contracts and so forth. They got bought out. I got very ill, probably overworked myself, and when I returned from that illness, they laid me off. Huge, huge, huge impact. So first you cry a little bit, and then you say, I can't cry all the time. I need to just figure this out. But hopefully you've planned for the future. Hopefully you have that backup that you need to get back on your feet and figure out who you want to be the next time around, right? And so basically it goes back to there's many reasons why we can be sad, sad because defeat in something you're doing in the job. But basically things happen for a reason. And so you have to make the best of that situation. You've got to get your finances in order and make sure how you can make this turn around. And you have to decide, do you want your future to look like that again? If it's a job. But that was, it was very defeating, to have that happen after building all those contracts for them. And then they kept all the guys, they didn't keep the women, it was one of those situations. So it's very frustrating, in a woman's world to compete with technical men and not be perceived the same way. So I've always had to work harder. But basically, it gave me an opportunity. One of my grandparents had just died, so it gave me an opportunity to help my parents go through that and close their estate, help me gain additional skills and understanding of just the whole process of grief and how to bounce back from it. And it helped me put into place what I wanted to do in the future. And I said I'd never go back to contract work, but the door opened and they wanted me to go. Two of the people that I brought into business under my old contracts became entrepreneurs and decided they wanted me running their office. So please help them run the office. So there I was back in the contract world again, and then back in the contract world after that, Sandia, was looking for that thing. So basically you have to just, suck it up. What I've learned about sadness and grief and feeling like you're defeated is let it happen, but don't dwell in it. Figure out what your next step is going to be and say, okay, if this isn't it, what is it? What is that door that's opening that I want to really be doing? Am I really doing what I love to be doing? Or at least like to be doing. And so basically during those times, I kept myself busy, cried when I needed to, and then moved on and said, I have so many skills that sounds like I'm bragging, but I feel like I learn new skills every single day. I'm not that person that sits around and doesn't learn something. I learned all about contracting now that we sold my parents' estate. I've learned about small business and workers' comp and Social Security and Medicare. So just don't be stagnant. Pick up that book, visit with people, figure out what your strengths are. Maybe you're down and you don't know what they are anymore. Surround yourself with people who care about you and who can tell you what your strengths are. Oftentimes people will say, well, you're really strong at this, and I'll scratch my head and go, I am? I didn't ever see myself that way. And I wouldn't describe myself as an outgoing person either. But to everybody that I serve, I am. And so it's an interesting thing. Sometimes your perceptions aren't what you think, and you need to just figure it out. And I've also learned that felt like failure, but it wasn't. It wasn't failure. It was an opportunity for me to take a breath and recreate myself. And oh my goodness, had I not had that break, so many things would have been different in my life, not having that break. And so that provided me that opportunity. So when you have, like now we have coronavirus and all these impacts to our finances and to our livelihood, and we're wondering how we're going to make it. Well, that's no different for a retired person like me than as it is for someone who's owning that small business down the street. And I have so much compassion for these people, so I think, okay, if I could get everything in order here, would I provide community service? Am I going to be that person that sits back and does nothing? Well, I'm not. I just have to get my stuff in order and figure out how that's going to happen, So defeat isn't defeat, Defeat is replaced, if you want to call it that, or failure. It's replaced with other things that are far more important than what you're going through today. You just have to get past it. So,
Yeah.
I don't know really that, but.
Well, we do. You've seen the podcast, so we do a speed round at the end just to go
Oh
through.
no. Okay.
Okay, so this is easy though.
Or something, huh?
Well, I'll explain it again just to be clear. Basically, I'll give you some scenarios or some situations, and we're going to talk about your go-to emotions when things are going well, and your go-to emotions when things are going poorly, when they're going bad. Because I feel like one of the things that entrepreneurs out there need to hear more of is that the other entrepreneurs out there are feeling the same thing, that they're going through the same stuff. Like, it's okay. Entrepreneurs, we're the ones that are going to change the world. We're the ones that are going to keep pushing and giving people experiences and allowing people to come out of where maybe they're hiding and be able to do the things that maybe they're inspired to do. And so sometimes I think it's nice to be able to hear where everybody's at and where we're not alone, So anyway, so I'll do that, and just whatever emotion it is that comes to your mind is good. When things are going well in business, what's your go-to emotion? Positive go-to emotion.
Content.
Okay. And when things are going poorly in business, what's your go-to? What's the negative?
Frustration.
Frustration. Okay. And in partnerships, what's your go-to emotion when things are going well?
Happy.
Okay. And what about for limiting emotion for partnerships when things are going poorly?
Well, challenged.
Okay. And you've done a ton of coaching, whether it be through people that you were helping make it through in their jobs, or whether it be in dancing. You've done tons of coaching with a lot of different people in a lot of different situations. So in coaching, what's your go-to emotion when things are going well?
Supportive.
Okay. And you're limiting emotion when things are going poorly.
When I'm coaching, you're saying?
Yeah. Coaching.
I don't know. There's, I feel, well, I don't know what the word is. I feel challenged, but not the same way I used challenged the other way. I feel like, okay, I feel like a conqueror. I will figure this out. And so I'm not sure what that word is, but okay, it's like cards down, going after this. We will solve this.
Relationships. When things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
Happy, celebratory.
Okay. And when things are going poorly, limiting emotion.
Seclusion sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. And I usually, when people have kids, I say your kids, but I'm your only kid, only child. Woo, only child for the win. So with your kid, go-to emotion when things are going well.
Happy.
Okay. And limiting when things are going poorly.
Probably communication, lack thereof.
Okay. Awesome. That's all of them for our speed round. You know, we could probably do this for like hours and hours. So we're going to do this again, because I think that there's a lot of, I mean, there's just so much that when you get you and I together talking about business and entrepreneurs and coaching and motivation, you know, we tend to be pretty inspiring, I think. So, you know, so we'll do this again. But I hope everybody enjoyed the episode, and for sure, like and comment if you're watching on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe. And as usual, if you know somebody that needs to hear this message today, please share it with them, because we're out to change the world one entrepreneur at a time. And we want to help in any way we can. So thank you so much, Mom. Appreciate you. Thanks for joining me. And
interesting. Happy to support you in your efforts.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. We'll see you guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
The great Tony Robbins said, success is 80% psychology and 20% skills. Crazy, right? 80% mindset and 20% mechanics. Yet if you're anything like me in your entrepreneurial adventure, you easily spent 100% of your time working on the mechanics. Listen, even though it's easy to get caught up in the mechanics, we all know we should work on our mindset. But for so long, the mindset tools that have been out there are so complicated. That's why I decided to put together the Mindset Workshop that'll teach you the mindset skills you need using an easy framework that you can learn fast and use for the rest of your life. In this free, live, 5-day Mindset Workshop specifically for entrepreneurs, I'll be teaching the step-by-step process to identify your core challenge that's holding you back from achieving your next big goal. Check it out at marketingyourmind.com.